You know someone like this. Maybe it is you. They walk into a room and their eyes scan the corners before they smile. They listen more than they speak. When someone is too nice too fast, they don't feel flattered. They feel suspicious. They hear a compliment and something inside quietly asks, "What do you want from me?" They don't share personal stories easily. They don't assume good intentions. And when someone lets them down, which happens, eventually, they don't act surprised. They just nod, almost to themselves, like they already knew, like they've been here before. Most people look at them and think, "Why are you so guarded? Why can't you just relax? Why do you always expect the worst?" But here is what most people don't understand. That person wasn't born this way. They didn't wake up one morning and decide to trust no one. They became this way. Slowly, quietly, one disappointment at a time. Think about it. When you've been burned enough times, your hand learns to pull back before the fire even touches you. When you've been betrayed by people you loved, your heart learns to build walls before the next person walks in. It is not paranoia. It is protection. It is what happens when life teaches you the same lesson over and over until you finally learn it. You don't just see people anymore, you read them. Because reading people kept you alive when trusting them almost killed you. And maybe that sounds dramatic to someone who has never been through it. But to you, if you've been there, it sounds like survival. They didn't wake up one day deciding to trust no one. They were taught, slowly, painfully, lesson by lesson. So how does a person get here? How does trust, which starts as a child's natural instinct, turn into something that feels dangerous, even foolish? It doesn't happen overnight. It happens drop by drop. Psychologists call this betrayal trauma theory. It is the idea that when someone you depend on, someone you love, someone who is supposed to have your back hurts you deeply, it doesn't just break your heart. It breaks something in the way your brain understands the world. Think about the first time it happened. Maybe you were a kid and your best friend told everyone your secret. The one you whispered to them in confidence. You remember that feeling, don't you? The hot shame? The cold confusion? How could they do that? I trusted them. Or maybe it was later, a partner who promised forever and left without looking back. A mentor who smiled at you while taking credit for your work. A family member who made you feel safe, then used what you told them against you. Each time, something shifted inside. Not dramatically, not like a door slamming. More like a window closing, just a crack. You didn't even notice it at first. You kept showing up, kept giving people the benefit of the doubt, kept believing that the next person would be different. But after enough times, you started to notice a pattern. The people who seemed the kindest often had hidden agendas. The ones who promised loyalty were often the first to leave. And the ones who said, "I'll never hurt you," sometimes hurt you the most. Your brain, being the brilliant survival machine that it is, started to learn. It began to flag certain behaviors as risky. Too much eye contact. Suspicious. Too many compliments. Manipulation. Too much interest in your life. They're gathering information. You didn't choose to see the world this way. Your brain chose for you, because its job isn't to make you happy. Its job is to keep you safe. And after enough betrayals, safety means assuming the worst. Trust stopped being the default. It became a risk assessment. Now here is the thing about people who've learned this lesson well. They develop a kind of superpower and a curse. Psychologists call it hypervigilance. It is the state of being constantly alert to danger. Not just physical danger, but emotional danger. The kind that hides behind a kind smile or a warm hug. You know what this feels like, don't you? You walk into a conversation and you're not just listening to words. You're listening to tone. You're watching micro-expressions. You're noticing when someone's laugh doesn't quite reach their eyes. You're cataloging inconsistencies, filing them away for later. Most people miss these signals. They float through life assuming everyone means what they say. But you've trained yourself to see the cracks before the whole thing breaks. This ability is connected to something called pattern recognition. Your brain has become incredibly efficient at spotting the early warning signs of betrayal. The same way someone who grew up in a chaotic home can sense tension in a room before anyone else. You can sense when someone's intentions aren't pure. And here is the painful truth. You're often right. The tragedy isn't that you expect the worst. The tragedy is that life keeps proving you right. The friend who seemed too good to be true, they ghosted you when you needed them. The coworker who acted like your biggest supporter, they were the ones spreading rumors. The person who swore they'd never leave, they left. Every time a small voice inside you whispers, "See, you knew. You always knew." And that voice feels like validation, but it also feels like a cage. Because while your hypervigilance protects you from being blindsided, It also keeps you from being surprised by goodness. When someone is genuinely kind, your brain still scans for the trap. When someone offers unconditional support, you wait for the conditions to appear. You're never fully present in a connection because part of you is always watching the exit. You're not afraid of the dark. You're just no longer surprised by what is in it. But here is what almost no one sees behind the walls, beneath the vigilance. Past all the defenses and the reading of rooms and the waiting for the other shoe to drop, there is something else, a quiet ache. Because here is the paradox of people who trust no one. They often want connection more than anyone. They just learn to want it silently, safely. From a distance, you know this feeling, don't you? You see someone who seems warm, genuine, different. And for a moment, just a flicker, you let yourself imagine what it would be like to let them in. To not have to perform. To not have to watch your back. To just be. But then the flicker dies. Because imagination is dangerous. Hope is dangerous. And you've learned that the higher you build your hopes, the harder they fall. Psychologists call this defensive pessimism. It is when you lower your expectations, not because you don't want things to work out, but because you're trying to protect yourself from the pain when they don't. You tell yourself you don't need anyone. You tell yourself you're fine alone. You tell yourself that people always let you down anyway. So why bother? And you believe it. Most days. But then there are those quiet moments, late at night, or early in the morning when the world hasn't started demanding anything yet. And in those moments, if you're honest with yourself, you feel it. That small voice. The one that remembers what it was like before the betrayals piled up, before trust became a liability. Back when you believed that people were basically good, and that being open was a strength, not a weakness. That voice isn't asking for much. It is not asking for a party or a parade or 100 friends. It is asking for one person, one safe place, one relationship where you don't have to keep one eye open. They built walls not to keep people out, but to see who cared enough to climb. But here is the cruel twist. The walls work too well. People try to get close, feel the cold stone, and give up. They assume you don't want connection. They assume you're cold, distant, unreachable. They don't realize that behind those walls, someone is pressing their hand against the stone, just hoping that someone will knock and keep knocking. So you stay protected. But you also stay lonely. And after a while, you forget which one you chose first. So where does that leave you? If you've read this far and recognized yourself in these words, where do you go from here? First, let me tell you something you probably need to hear. Your distrust is not a personality flaw. It is not a character defect. It is not something you chose because you're broken or bitter or incapable of love. It is wisdom, hard-earned, painfully acquired. Lesson after lesson, scar after scar, you learn something that most people refuse to learn. That humans are capable of terrible things, and that love and betrayal can come from the same hands. You didn't become guarded because you're weak. You became guarded because you're aware. You saw the monster, and you never forgot its face. But here's the other truth, the one that is harder to hold. The same wisdom that protects you can also imprison you. The same walls that keep out the wolves also keep out the warmth. And somewhere deep down, you know that a life without risk is also a life without depth. So, what do? You don't tear down the walls overnight. That would be foolish. You've spent years building them, and they've kept you safe. But maybe, just maybe, you start building a door. A small one you control. One that only opens when you've had enough time to observe, to feel, to trust slowly. Not because you expect perfection from people, but because you've accepted that everyone, including you, is a mix of light and shadow. You stop waiting for someone to be completely safe. Instead, you ask, is this person safe enough? Do they show up consistently? Do their actions match their words over time? And when someone does, when someone proves, day after day, that they're not going anywhere, you let them a little closer. Not all at once, but enough. Because here is the final truth people who trust no one forget. Trust isn't something you give. It is something you build. Together. Slowly, brick by brick. And the most beautiful trust isn't the kind that comes easily. It is the kind that survives because both people know exactly how fragile it is. You're not afraid of connection. You're just no longer willing to pay for it with your peace. So, if you're someone who trusts no one, here is my gentle invitation. Keep your wisdom. Keep your awareness. Keep the part of you that sees what others miss. But leave a small crack in the armor. Just enough for the right person to prove you wrong. Not because everyone deserves your trust, but because you deserve the kind of connection that makes the walls feel unnecessary. You've survived the betrayals. You've learned the lessons. Now, maybe, just maybe, you're ready for something else. Something that doesn't require you to be naive. Something that only asks you to be brave enough to try again.